Welcome everybody to Letter Now, a podcast where we nurture the hand lettering masters of tomorrow, today. My name is Martina Flor. I'm a lettering artist, author, and educator, and today I have an awesome guest to talk about personal projects. How do you start a project from scratch and finish it without procrastinating? How do you come up with ideas for personal projects? How do you monetize a personal project? And how do you balance real paid work with other things you do with your art? And for this, I have a top-notch artist and designer here with me, Ricardo Gonzalez, also known as It's a Living. His signature script style can be easily recognized from murals to commercial work for some of the biggest brands to a simple sticker in the streets. I love that, Ricardo, that I found on your website. So hi,
Thank you.
Ricardo. Thank you for being
Hi, Martina.
in the podcast today. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thank you so much for inviting me, Martina. It's been quite a bit of time since we talked, but still friends throughout the years.
I love that. I love that. So I took this description from your website. How would you describe yourself? How would you introduce yourself as an artist?
I just paint letters. That's all I say. No, because I mean, some people the most basic. I mean, I just say I'm a graphic designer, but then people more ask, and basically I paint letters for a living. But yeah, and then if the conversation keeps going, maybe it's hard to say because I'm not really a street artist, but I am a lettering artist, but graphic designer. So I'm fine with whatever really description. So I'd say like a lettering artist is fine.
But you kind of like your work. I feel that your work really takes place in the streets, on the streets mainly, right?
Mainly, yes. So actually, this is cool because it brings us to the topic, personal projects and commercials. So I'm
Mm.
in between both 50-50. So some of the projects I do in the street, I like that. Some of them are unpaid. So I really enjoy that. And I like it because it's public and it's a good way to share the art. So yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I invited you today to discuss this topic specifically because I find really interesting. Something I find really interesting about your approach is how when I look at your work, and for those that don't know Ricardo's work, I will add his a link to his website on the show notes. Ricardo makes really great work, and when I say great, I also mean huge because Ricardo, among other things, makes really big murals on the street, and you will see what I mean when you get to see his work. You will see what I mean when I say that by looking at your bulk of work, Ricardo, I find hard to identify what's commercial work and what's not. If I didn't know you, I would say that you're a rich kid that doesn't need to make a living and just creates art all day. So, is that true? Is that your secret identity, Ricardo?
No, but it's funny you said. I mean, some people have the because I don't know why. Some people say like, "Oh man, you're always like traveling and doing all these things," and yeah, but I mean, still trying to make a living, and that's part of it's a living. Like I mean, it's one thing is yeah, you get paid for like flights and hotel, whatever, but like at the end of the day, it's like basically it's a job, and ultimately it's a passion, to do it and to be thankful for being here. But still here. I'm in Mexico right now, Mexico, so hanging out here, just kind of relaxing. So yeah.
That's amazing. So we'll hear more about your personal story and how you got into this as we go down the questions today. As you know, this is a listener-driven show, so we are here to answer questions from our listeners. We will start with some voice messages. You can send us your voice memos with questions and comments by simply going to martinaflor.com/voice message or email your voice memo to podcast@martinaflor.com. We had really interesting questions coming in today. So this one is from Suraj from India.
Hi Martina, this is Suraj from India. So my question is, actually it's three questions. So someone as a beginner like me who hasn't done any personal project might have these. So one, how do you start your personal project from scratch? Two, how do you finish that project without procrastinating on it for too long? And 3, how do you monetize that project if that project is monetizable, that is? So these are my questions. Thank you.
I love this question from Surek because it doesn't only speak about how to start and what to do. That means like what's a good idea for a
Yeah.
personal project, but I think the question speaks about something very important, which is like how to actually finish it. So monetizing is also something you can do with a personal project, and Suraj is actually asking about this as well, but we can leave that for the end and start by the beginning. So starting a personal project, I think there's an essential question to ask here, Suraj, before you start. Like, why do you want to start a personal project? Do you want to explore a new creative ground? Do you want to experiment with a new idea or technique? Do you want to build a portfolio of work? Because all of this will ultimately affect what your personal project will be about, right? So I always ask this question because a personal project is work. You actually have to put in some work and hours of your time.
Sure.
You know, absolutely. So, and that means that for it to succeed, there has to be something waiting for you down the road, some goal you want to achieve with that. This is what will keep you, you know, going and getting the work done, actually. So, for instance, if you want to grow your portfolio of murals, you might want to come up with a personal project around making murals, or if you want to explore a creative technique like, I don't know, calligraphy, you could start a personal project that uses calligraphy. But there should be a personal goal within that personal project, right? So, Ricardo, what are your thoughts about this? What would you say to Suraj, who has no experience at doing personal projects, but wants to start one? What makes a good idea for a personal project? What do you think?
I actually really love the fact, like those three questions and the order. So for her, I think, and I think for everyone, still for me to this day, why do I want to do a personal project? I think at the beginning for me was more about building a portfolio, you know, like because at some point I heard you get hired what you show in your portfolio. So if you start putting websites, you're gonna get hired to do websites and illustration. You know, if you want to do lettering, you should put lettering. You should do calligraphy, and like doesn't matter if it's not for a client. Like ultimately, commercial work, especially for me, is like the end. Like the main thing is to create something, you know. And then that's how I started actually from in college. Like my graphic design portfolio was all personal projects, and I made him, I presented him super, well, I tried the best to make him look professional, you know, and well documented and all that. And throughout the years, I keep trying to do the same thing. It still works to this day. It's not like I have it all figured out, but now compared to the beginning where you want to build a portfolio, now when you do have a portfolio, excuse me, what do you do? Because it's so easy to get caught into the cycle of doing the same thing. Clients already know you for what you do, and then you just kind of like get bored, you know. But maybe like, you know, you have a little bit of hunger of like grow and experiment, do something else. So for me now it's more about creating something that I wanted to create that I don't have the opportunity to create, because you know it's always difficult to talk to clients and then pitch them an idea and convince them, and it's always difficult. At the end of the day, they're gonna be happy, but to gain their trust is so difficult. This is one like the two questions, the two last questions linked up. Like, how do you start it? Right, you start it because there's a necessity, right? I guess if you want to communicate something, you have this idea and you have to be brave. And some people might think like, this is stupid, you shouldn't do it, why, don't spend your money on your stuff, you know. And I think it's a self-investment, which is so amazing. A lot of people tell you sometimes you shouldn't do it, you shouldn't spend your money on that, that looks, you know, and you just push through it. I ran into that like last year during the pandemic. I created my own project throughout like 3 months. I locked myself in a huge studio and just paint. Some people told me it was pretty stupid to be spending money when nobody was spending money, everybody's at home. Like I was at home, but I was like, I just got a huge studio, so I just locked myself in. So still I pushed through. And then this leads to the second question: how do you keep going? Just push, you know? Like I ended up loving that project, hating it. Some days I will come and then paint so much, get a lot of things done, amazing days, but they're really bad days where you come and you hate what you're doing. And it questions you, why do you do it? Why? Nobody's paying you. Like you're spending your money, your time. It's hot, you're sweating, you're uncomfortable, you're exhausted, you know, like is this gonna pay off? Is if it's not, like, and doesn't matter if it pays or not. Am I gonna finish it? So at the end, like, it's just a battle with yourself, especially long-term project, because this was one of the biggest for me. And that's the second question. You just push through, you know, then really challenge your passion for what you do. Maybe at like maybe halfway you realize it's not for you. Maybe you really gain more love for what you do, you know, and then you push through. Like by the end, you're exhausted, you're destroyed, no matter what project, right? It could be print, it could be whatever, like an alphabet. By the end, you just want to get it done. And it's so difficult to keep the quality by at that point, right? So yeah, I think it's really difficult, but it's really rewarding. And especially when it's a personal project, because at the end of the day, you don't have control of of what is it going to turn. Like it could be a community project that you didn't think like it will reach so many people. Maybe you inspire other people, you know, maybe your mom loves it, you know, like at the end of the day, something positive is going to happen, and it doesn't have to be about money. And yeah.
Yeah, and it's so interesting what you say, because you were speaking about like how in the beginning creating personal projects was about building a portfolio, right, and putting some work out there, so you will get more work from that kind, right? But now, as you have already like a solid portfolio as an artist, using personal work is more in terms of like exploring new areas or trying to push your boundaries, right? And
Yeah.
I would say that, you know, personal projects have a lot to do with that, with pushing boundaries, with leaving your comfort zone. And what really caught my attention from what you said is that you mentioned that sometimes it's tough, sometimes it's uncomfortable, you know, and because pushing your limits or like going out of your comfort zone, it is uncomfortable. That's why it's, you know, outside of your comfort zone. And if you're feeling that as you're doing your personal project, if you're having moments of where you're like unmotivated, or you're having moments where you are like, hey, I don't know where this is leading to, this is just part of it. It's just part of that process of like, you know, pushing that boundary a little bit farther away, right?
Yeah.
So it's something perhaps that we need to embrace as we move forward with a personal project, right? And I think
Definitely.
there's something really important from what you said, that you were, you know, you had this experience of like spending 3 months locked up in your studio, and you were sometimes going to your studio and kind of you know, feeling like this is leading nowhere and I don't feel like doing anything, but you were
The
still
world is
showing.
gonna end, and I'm
Yeah.
painting. I was like, you know, I was thinking at that point, I'm like, why I'm the only like painting? Like I'm supposed to be home. I mean, I was by myself. So is but like, why am I doing this? Like, what am like? Am I trying to prove? You start questioning so much yourself. I think it's very healthy, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also very healthy to show up, you know, to just assume, you know, to just incorporate these moments into your routine and assume that some days you will show up and you will be totally up for doing stuff and really inspired. Some days you will show up and you will be like, I don't know if I want to do anything today or not. And that's just part of it, right? So, Surak, to answer to your question, I think those are great points. The ones that Ricardo was mentioning to you right now. And my advice will be to start there, to find something that, you know, that interests you, like that really moves you. And afterwards you can definitely like move on to this, because she also asked about Surah also asked about the idea of monetizing, right? So first start by asking yourself, what do you want to do, what do you want to achieve here, what is your ultimate goal, and afterwards you can explore the idea of monetizing that project, right? So Ricardo, let's speak shortly about monetizing personal projects. As I mentioned just now, monetizing is perhaps not the thing you need to start with. Otherwise, that might, limit your exploration or your creative freedom. If you think of, the idea of monetizing or the goal of monetizing that project, then is no longer a personal project for the means of like creating something. It's just a project to create profit, which is all fine with that. But the definition of personal project is more about like exploring or opening new creative ground, right? So monetizing is essentially driving profit from that personal project, and that profit can come directly or indirectly. That means that you could sell whatever you did. For instance, if you created a piece of lettering, you can sell it and make money out of it. You could also use those pieces of work, like Ricardo did in the beginning, to attract businesses or clients or assignments, right? So what was your experience at monetizing your work? So you mentioned in the beginning that some of the work you put out there in the very beginning, or some of the personal projects you did in the very beginning, were about creating things that will attract new clients or will connect you with clients and commercial work. Were there other ways of monetizing your personal projects that you experienced in the past? Or
Yeah,
in your
no,
career?
definitely. I mean, I think again, it's always been, yeah, you can make stuff, but then also I think, and maybe this is my graphic design mentality, like, all right, let's set up a budget, and then like that budget, how much can I lose, increment, because a budget always needs maybe a bit more, and you have to have a threshold. So I always like make a budget. I have to be organized, and that's my personality. I organize like since day one, like especially that project last year. I knew like, all right, I can rent this for this 3 months. This is how much paint costs. This is much, and not just because like I can spend it, because why do I work so much and why do I get paid from big clients if I cannot invest it in myself? It's not just like having a luxurious life, and no, but I think it's really you given a good pay from a big client. What do you do with the money? Definitely save it, yes. And we don't talk about that, especially like not as a graphic designer, lettering artist. Like we just want to like create the best work, but like for me, it's really important to like set up like a budget from that. If I can invest maybe yearly like 10-15% of what I could make, and then put in like a couple personal projects, why not? I mean, just to really have financial freedom, to be able to like, all right, you know what, I want to like do this project. It's going to be costly, it's going to be cool, and it's an adventure, you have to do it. And in terms of monetizing it, I think there are a lot of ways. I mean, you might gain some, and not just, it's just about money. Like you can probably win an award, that's something really also could be important, maybe as a foreigner, because we need visas. So maybe an award would be great, maybe you will attract new clients, new businesses. That's another way. Like maybe you can turn your product into something tangible, like maybe prints, shirts, stuff like that, like there's so many ways. But like I think it's just really, because realistically our job is not just drawing letters and have fun. We have to think about budget, how like marketing, and how to do all these things, and for me it's really important, very important. And then also very important to keep it like smooth and chill as possible, like still make money, but like be a little bit wiser with it, and then you make something, you gain something, invest a little bit in yourself, save it, carry on, you know.
Absolutely. So, lastly, Suraj, to finish with your question, I want to give you one of my tools. Is a worksheet that I call 3 Steps to Create, and essentially walks you through the steps to get the work done. So I created this worksheet because once you have those 3 essential things in place, you will stop procrastinating and finally get hands-on. You can go to martinaflor.com/create now, and you can download it for free. So we have another good question from one of our listeners. This one is from Vera from Canada.
I have one question for you. Creative curiosity is something that is super important to me, and I believe in self betterment through self initiated projects. Therefore, my passions ever so often, change, and I like to experiment with different mediums and different styles. So, naturally, that is reflected in my work as well. So, I was just wondering if that is good or bad for a personal brand and being recognized for a style or artistic voice. Thank you.
Vera, you're using personal projects to explore different media and techniques, and I think that's great. Now, Vera is asking here something that, I think her question is actually whether this variety of mediums and styles are good for her personal brand as an artist. And I think Vera is speaking for many artists out there that are looking for that unique style that's going to set them apart, right? Ricardo, I feel that we live now in times where we have the perception that there's a lot of people doing whatever that is that we are doing right now. So I personally go on social media and I encounter myself like endlessly scrolling through a feed of illustrators and lettering artists, which I believe is something that has a negative impact on many of us. We have the perception that the market is oversaturated and there's just too many of us, right? So I believe that Vera is asking whether she should focus on just one style or if she should use all of her interests in her portfolio, to set up, like to stand out in the crowd. And she's worried about this motivation she has, this personal motivation she has to use different mediums and explore different styles, and whether that will be problematic to stand out in the crowd, right? To define or to have a defined style, right? So how do you see that? How do you approach the creation of your personal brand? Do you approach it in any way? Do you try to pursue a style, or you just don't pay attention to that? How do you go about that?
That's a really good question, and I oftentimes end up talking about it with other friends or designers, artists. But I think more like, because this, I think it could be 2 ways. I mean, you could do different things and you can still get a lot of work, different styles, but you could also do one style and then be well known for it. I mean, there's not really right or wrong, to be honest. It's like, what do you really want? What do you like? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter. There's still people like they are very good at everything, like a lot, and that's amazing. But there's people that like only do one thing, you know? And I feel like I fall in that category. Like, I just do one style and it's like super easy. But like it to be honest, like for me, it took time, experiment with a lot of styles, black letters, scripts, Syrian, and then like trying different tools and all these things. And then just like, it just happened one day and I was like, all right, I really love where this is going. It's super simple. And I love that because, I mean, maybe it really reflected with my personality, like the simplicity, but like with more like a background. And this happened actually like right after when I went to Cooper Union, after trying different styles, learning more about letters and construction, typography, typeface design, deeper understanding allows you to really know the range of styles. and maybe some people just do, gothic or something, like,
Mm.
and it's whatever you really feel like it's good for you and works for you. And I think also the problem, like, we look at the social media and like, oh my God, that person's so good. And for me, I stopped that long ago. It's like too much, but I still love to see friends doing good projects. And to me, like, that's amazing. I think in a way, it's a healthy competition, like, oh my God, they're pushing you. Like, I need to go do more. And
Yeah.
but then there's the paradox, like doing too much all the time. But like, I love to do all the time stuff. I try. I try.
Yeah,
I
I just
think, you
I just
know,
want to give a little bit of context on what you just said. So Cooper
Cooper
Union
Union.
is actually a type design program, and Ricardo was a student there. And when he speaks about the script lettering, he has a very distinct style that he uses like a monoline kind of marker, and he creates this monoline kind of script lettering, right? And this is his very signature style. So I think you explore. So you started with the course at Cooper Union, and then you moved on to like exploring different styles, and then you took this line of work, right? You found
Yeah.
that this script lettering was something you enjoyed doing, and you kept
Just
on doing
combining
that.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Really having fun, because at that point also, that was probably like 7 years ago. So
Mm.
at that point, I was experimenting with different tools, and I always loved spray paint from graffiti. And that was like, I felt like it was a bit newer to lettering, because everybody, I mean, we're used to like pen, pencil. So I really wanted to take it to another level, just from like smaller version to like bigger, and then like eventually painting a mural. And eventually, I ended up painting bigger and bigger murals, and I have a lot of fun, and still discovering new tools, paint, and it's a learning path. That's what I love.
That's so interesting. I think there's
It just takes
something.
time also for style.
Yeah.
Style cannot be taught. Yeah, style can't be
Mm.
taught. It just happens throughout time, and just putting everything you love into it. The weirder you are, like, doesn't matter. It just, if you like anime and whatever music you put into your work, that's a flavor. That's really your style, and the people like, oh, I love the bright colors with, and it
Mm.
becomes part of you, an extension of you, your work.
Mm, I love that. I think there's something really powerful in this, like style cannot be taught. It just comes through. You cannot control it also. And I think for answering to Vera's question, I think you mentioned also, or you ask a question that is very essential for you to find whether you need to find a style, or how to find a style, and that is like, what do you want to do? What do you enjoy doing? And in your case, Ricardo, you found through experimenting with different styles, you found that you liked doing a specific style, and then you use different tools for that. And this is how your style, if we want to call it like this,
Yeah.
sort of developed, because you followed your interest, you follow what you wanted to do. So I think that's such a powerful question to find your style. Like,
Yeah.
what do you want to do? And it's interesting because personally, as a lettering artist, I rebelled against the idea of having a style. And as you did in the beginning, I deliberately drawn all sorts of styles, like black letter and script lettering and serif and everything. And
Everything.
nevertheless, people keep telling me that my style is really unique, and that they even recognize that is mine from just looking at it. So I would say to Vera, like, so even if you try to avoid trying like a style or finding a specific style, it would just shine through. So, it's like you said, style cannot be taught, style cannot be created,
It's your
style.
personality.
Yeah.
What, it's an extension of your personality. It's like brighter color. Maybe some people just use black and white. It doesn't really matter. Also, like, when I started doing, like, when I went for it, I knew like no one was really doing monoline. I mean, it was already there, but no one was pushing on it. And I'm like, all right, no one is really doing it. I'm gonna do it because no one. So I'm like, all right, just try something. And I didn't know if it was gonna do something good. And also, my style is really difficult to like market. For instance, like a lot more clients prefer, something like sans serif, like something more readable. But like, I think that's what I love from what I do. It's like so difficult and it's not really for every project, but some clients are up for it. And then adjust it and see what comes out. How can you push that? What else can you do with like the way I see what I do? I only have one line, it's monoline. It doesn't have contrast, anything. What can I do with that? It's so basic, but it's so difficult and entertains me so much.
Like it's such a simple briefing, right? It's such a simple brief. You have to
Yeah,
work with the monoline script, and that's
yeah.
all you. Yeah, that's great. So we will move now on to our inspirational quote segment. So,
All
Ricardo,
right.
we all love quotes, and in this section, we do our best to answer questions from our listeners with a quote. So we later put these quotes on our show notes so that listeners can letter them and share them on social media. The
All right
truth
on.
the truth is that we actually just we just chat about it for a while, and if we happen to find a quote, then great, and we will add it to the show notes. If not, don't
Okay.
worry, we will
Okay.
come up with a quote or pick up on something you said, and we will add it to the show notes so that we will make you sound good. Okay.
All
So
right.
here's the first question from Luisa. I have trouble balancing real paid work with personal projects I love. Any advice? So I hear in Luisa's questions that she's having trouble allocating time for personal projects. And I get it. You also need to pay the bills, as you mentioned before, Ricardo, and you need to do that client work. And at that time, at the same time, you want to carry on personal projects, but don't want to get burned out in the process, right? So, Luisa, in your case, I would like to first reiterate on the first thing we spoke about, which is like you need to ask yourself why you want to do this personal project. What is the purpose of that? And this is what will keep you motivated throughout time. And the second question I would do is, how can you allocate time for it? The same way you allocate time to eat and to do sports, how can you allocate time to carry on personal projects? Let's say like an hour a day, half an hour a day, whatever that is, but try to allocate that time. And third, is your project too ambitious? Because I think this is perhaps one of the things that I would avoid with a personal project, which is to make it too huge or too hard or too elaborate. So I have a very short quote for you, Luisa, which is like, start small or keep it small, right? So when it comes to personal project, my advice or like my first rule would be to keep it small. And I have done huge personal projects in the past, and that's why I'm telling you this, because it became really hard for me to finish
Yeah.
that actual project. Once I set myself like the goal, one of my personal projects was called letter collections, and I set myself the goal
Wow.
of sending 100 postcards, hand letter postcards, like digital lettering, to
Wow.
100 people. And it took like years to complete, like and so I would say, Luisa, to you, like, my first advice would be to start small. And perhaps, Ricardo, you're not the best person to ask about this because your personal projects are huge. But
Yeah, but I think like no, like I really connect with that, but because I would say know your limits, then break them. Because for instance, that the project now I do personal, they're getting bigger and bigger, and then like I knew, for instance, like the past project I did, that there were 12 murals in 3 months in 400-meter square space. Uh, it was big. It was really big, and I had to paint everything from like like paint the walls, everything just on my by myself. And it wasn't just because I wanted to do it by myself. I was quarantined. I was, but I knew how fast I could paint, and I knew what tools I need, and also I had limitations, a lot of limitations, because I'm here. I was here in my hometown, Durango, Mexico, so I couldn't get all the paint. I couldn't get stuff that I needed it that are more easier. So those things set limits, and also I knew how fast I could paint. But down the road, it's just a battle with yourself, and then eventually I ended up, like overcoming my, I guess, fears, my doubts, and then my limits, just, and I passed it, and that was very grateful. That was very gratifying.
Yeah.
At the end, I was like, wow, I finished all this, and people really understood what I was doing, because everyone like, you're insane. You're like just locked in cell in there painting, and are you making money? I'm like, no. Like, why? And I'm like, it's hard. It was, but by the end of the day, I ended up doing a show. It was the first mural lettering show, and it was for my community here. It was amazing. People came, despite um, the pandemic. People like follow the rules. I had someone at the door checking you, all this, but people came, 5 people at a time, 5 minutes. I could talk to them. They could experience the whole space,
Great.
especially in a time where there was nothing to do. To come to a place and then see some art, that was really amazing. Students came from my hometown. They're, it was really inspiring. And my family came. They were like, whoa, like, no wonder why you were there every day, but it was amazing. I ended up like loving that project so much. Also, I closed one day the whole place, because I opened it for one day for the show, only one day, and the next day I invited my friends to come skate it, because here it's so hot. So I ended up like inviting to skate, and then the next day I erased everything. So 3 months of work, just erase it,
Oh my God.
and that was it.
Oh my God. So I think for Luisa, it will be interesting to keep in mind like the day after, or like that ultimate thing that she will achieve by following that personal project, right? Like in your case, it was like perhaps 3 months of work, but then at the end you had this very rewarding exhibition with your friends and the people, and showing like the kind of work you were doing. So all of the work that you put in kind of made sense at the end, right? So Luisa, just to wrap up your question, I would just tell you, like, you don't necessarily need to like make a huge project like Ricardo's made, or like the project that I started in at that time, like which took years to complete or whatever. A personal project could also be something very small, something that, it just takes you half an hour a day, and you just have a final product at the end that you can, you're proud of. You feel that you have achieved something, and you can even put in your portfolio if you want, but it doesn't necessarily need to be like a huge stuff. So we are going to move on to the second question on social media, that is from Ale. So the question is, my biggest challenge with personal projects is to get the hell out of my comfort zone. How do you deal with that? Well, I mean, I think you're not having issues with that right now.
Trying, focus, stay focused.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have like a love-hate relationship with comfort zones, right? For instance, in my case, I was telling you before we started, Ricardo, starting this podcast was way out of my comfort zone. I've been thinking about this for years, and I had tons of mental blocks around it. I was telling to myself, like, I'm not a native English speaker. I'm not a podcaster. I'm just, a lettering artist. And I was thinking that, people will say that, the podcast is not good, and that I screw up, and I was telling myself all of these stories that I think that Ale here asking the question is probably telling, it's having the same stories in the mind, right? Like we all tell the same stories over and over. And these are the stories that hold us back from actually doing stuff and starting projects, right? And I want to tell you, Ale, that people don't give a damn if you screw up. We like to think that others are constantly looking at what we are doing, but the truth is that they're looking at what they are doing, right? And we tend to think that, oh my God, everyone is just looking at what I'm doing right now and either if I screw up or not. But actually, if you screw up, people will forget, It's like, so my quote for Ale is if you always stay inside your comfort zone, you will never get to see what's for you outside of it. So sometimes like leaving that comfort zone shows you also new things that you can enjoy. Like I can say now that we have recorded, personally with this podcast thing, we have recorded, I think this is the number 7. And I feel,
Congratulations.
yeah, I know. I feel
You're doing
so
so
happy.
good, by the way.
I feel so happy about it. Every time I'm recording a podcast, it's like I feel like a 15-year-old, like kind of excited before it, and I feel that this is something I really enjoy, and I didn't know that up front. Up front, it was like this fear of recording a podcast, but now it's like, hey, this is something I really enjoy doing and I want to get better at, and this is why I say that, leaving that comfort zone is perhaps also a way of discovering new things that you might enjoy doing, right? So what about you?
Some of your skills, yeah. I mean, like, sorry to cut you off, but yeah, I think it's so amazing because this is kind of like different to like doing lettering, but you're talking about lettering, and then it's fun because then your other skills are improving, your talking skills, your English skills, and that's kind of like what happened also to me, like doing talks, you've done talks as well, and to me, like the first time I got invited, I was like a bit terrified, also not native English speaker, but I've been living in US for quite some time, but still nerve-wracking to talk to a audience, talking terms, whatever. But then one of my friends one time really said, it was something that really resonated to me and made me calm down. And then after that, every talk I'm like, whatever. But he said, you cannot screw up if you talk about your work. Oh. And I like, it's true. I'm talking about my work. Like I just have to talk it as if I was talking to a friend. And then in that moment, and then my skills became better talking, making eye contact with the audience. And, it doesn't have to be always just passion projects and just doing letters, but yeah, it's fun. It's fun to put yourself in a weird situation, but also there's people out there that are going to help you out. Maybe your friends are not friends, but no. So you're never alone, to be honest.
Yeah. And I think that there's something so rewarding about doing something that is totally out of your comfort zone or that you have a fear for, is that, the minute after is like such a rewarding feeling of like, I mean, I did it, It's like, if there's something I like about speaking, because I've also done some speaking in my career, and it's like, every time I'm going on stage, I think for myself, like, why did I sign up for this? Why did I say yes? It's like, I could be at home. I could be at home.
Committed. There's no turning point. Start freaking out.
But then afterwards, it's just such a great feeling. It's like, I mean, I've done it and people were happy. And it's like, I brought some value to these people. And that's such a rewarding feeling when you go over your fears to bring something new to the world or something valuable to other people. That's such a rewarding thing to do. So I think we have given Ale a lot of motivation to just go ahead and leave the comfort zone. Yeah, totally. So lastly, this is our Better Now segment, and we will share in this segment something that we are really happy about, or something that has impacted our lives lately. Could be anything. Could be like a small thing. Could be some huge project that you did lately that is super important for you. What would you like to share? Is there something that lately make you laugh or made you happy? Whatever it is.
I think right now for me, it's actually not work related, nothing,
Mm.
and it's been actually the more I grow, like yeah, age, whatever, but also professionally work, I tend to look back. Really, just life brings me back to a point where I remember cartoons and stuff, and by saying this, I go like now I'm skating a lot more because
Mm.
I skateboard and I skate a lot and I love here skating with my friends. And then the second one, and I think the most powerful one right now that I'm super excited and thankful for is like I went back to swimming. I used to train swimming.
Mm. Mm.
So and it was funny because today I went to train earlier. I go like 8 to 9 every day. It's swim like so much, like 2 3 kilometers. It's crazy. I just started, but like this was crazy because I used to swim like 17 years ago. Like probably I was like middle school,
Mm.
and I've been training. I always have this passion. It's one of those passions that you sacrifice in order to grow professionally, and
Mm.
because you're especially in New York, you just work. So I had to put aside other passions. Now
Mm.
coming back to it 17 years ago, and I talked to the trainer today. I'm like, how long you been working here? And he's like, about 20 years. I'm like, you trained me
Oh my
when I
God.
was like 15. And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I grew up a little, a little bit of hair, and but a lot taller. And it was funny, and that happened today. I was like, that was pretty amazing, to go back to root, like, and it was a very special time in my life when I started doing that as well as right now. So yeah.
That's amazing. So coming back to do things that you used to do as a kid, like skating and swimming.
Still, I'm 32. I'm like skating, and some people here, I'm like, dude, you're the same, and I'm like, I'm still the same. Look, I'm not like a little kid, to be honest.
Amazing. So in my case, it seems that I'm speaking about the podcast all the time, but the podcast just came out in this conversation. And something I wanted to share that really made me smile lately is that through this space, through the podcast, I'm getting like a lot of comments on social media. And recently I received a comment from a listener. She was listening to I think the second podcast we did with Belinda Ku. She's a lettering artist and she's also a freelancer. She's a mother of two, and we were sharing like insights about like what it is to be a freelancer and what it is to be a mother at the same time.
Oh
And
my God, that's another level.
that's another level. But
How do you do it? Wow.
we'll probably make a podcast about this.
You should. That's amazing. Training for when I grew up.
Great. So, and what is great is that I got a message recently from someone on Instagram who she is also a mother of two, and she told me that through that episode she was inspired to start freelancing. She's also, she has been procrastinating with the idea of starting freelancing, and this podcast actually, or that episode of the podcast actually gave her the motivation and the inspiration to give it a go. So that's so rewarding, and I love these messages that you all the listeners keep sending me on social media. So we're coming to the end of this show, Ricardo.
Amazing. Wow.
It was such an honor to have you, really. Can you tell us where can we find you on the internet?
Well, first of all, thank you. The honor is mine. It's been amazing. It's kind of also a catch up, so it's been pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's so good.
You can just find me. It's a living. It's pretty easy. My website, It's a Living. My name is Ricardo Gonzalez. Website, Instagram. I try to be just Instagram and my website. Maybe Behance also. It's a Living. Just keep it consistent.
Amazing. So it was great having you in the podcast, and I will put all of this information, all of your handles and stuff in the show notes. You can find me, the host of this show, on social networks at Martina Flor on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. If you have questions or comments, go to martinaflor.com martinaflor.com/podcast, where you can see previous episodes, find show notes, and send voice memos with your comments and questions. You can comment on things we spoke about in this episode with Ricardo, and we will play it on the next one. You can also watch these episodes on YouTube. Just go to martinaflor.com/YouTube to find them. You can, of course, listen to all of the episodes on your favorite podcast platform. This is it for today. If you love this episode, subscribe to this podcast. And if you leave us a review, it will help others find us. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Ricardo, for being there.
Thank you for the invitation. It's been great.
Thank you. And see you in the next episode of Let Her Now.